right. This is Ross Payton with Role Playing Public Radio. This is episode 8, The Role of Rules.
And I'm Tom Church, and holy crap, is it 8 already?
What? Yes,
8 episodes.
8 episodes.
Holy
and we have
Lord.
a special guest co-host.
Hi.
Hello.
Please introduce yourself to our listeners.
I'm Dan McDowell. I've gamed with Ross and Tom off and on for a few years now.
Yeah.
All right, we'll go.
And that's really the only qualification you need to be on our show.
Way to answer my next question was what the hell makes you think you're qualified to join us here? You game
Very
with us.
little.
Yeah,
There you go.
And of course, this is a proud member of the Goblin Broadcast Network, and the music we're going to be playing on this episode is from the Old Ones, a H.P. Lovecraft / Cthulhu Mythos themes metal band. So,
Goblin Broadcasting.
yes, embrace the goblin.
Hooray for goblins.
All right, yeah. Anyways, so we're going to be talking. Oh, also, one thing before we get started on our main discussion. If you're from China, if you're a Chinese person, you're listening to us, ni hao. Hi. I've noticed a lot of links. A lot of people from music.soso.com and qq.com have been listening to us. So, hi. How you doing? Please send us an email explaining what the hell you like about RPPR.
Is it the fact that Ross looks like Harry Potter? Or?
Harry Potter, which means I'm a white guy with glasses, which that's pretty much all you need to well, that's another story. Okay, the long story short, I went to Japan, visited a junior high there, and all the students thought I was Harry Potter because...
You're a white guy, short white guy with glasses.
Well, actually by Japanese standards, I'm very tall.
Oh, but you're a white guy with glasses.
And actually by most standards, I'm average in height, Tom.
It's not my fault that I'm large, Ross.
Yes, you're very large. That's no moon. Ooh.
Ross?
Whoa.
Yeah, okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
Don't make me. You're less than a foot away. I could hurt you very badly.
I'm sorry, Tom.
No, you're not. But anyway,
Okay.
let's continue.
Also, if you like our show, Role Playing Public Radio, please give us a good review on iTunes. Please let us know what you think. We've got a couple of reviews on there. We could always use more. So.
And we're not number one yet. We're working on it.
Yeah.
We'll get there with your help.
Yeah, those reviews will help. So, but obviously, if you don't care about us, I don't know why you're downloading and listening to us then. But either way, if you do like us, you're using iTunes, please give us a review. Just any few words. We're not making any money on it.
All right, enough of this blatant self-promotion stuff. It's time for the topic.
Yes, the role of rules. And what we mean by that is, what is the purpose of the rules in a role-playing game? That sort of seems like, a dumb question to ask, but at what point, do rules make or break a game? When should you enforce them, when should you not, as a player and as a game master? I'll start by saying, basically, 99% of the, not 90, but 90% of the time, you need to follow the rules. You need to, what's been written in there has usually been play tested, and the important thing for a game is to make it fair, consistent, and challenging. If you go off the rules too often, you'll lose those 3 traits, and I think your game will suffer.
Rules are essentially the leash you use on your players, and also the shock collar you use on yourself.
Remember, this is a game. The ending should not be predetermined. The great thing about gaming over, linear narrative is that we don't know exactly how we're going to wind up there. When I sit down at the table ready to run a game, I have no idea what the players are going to do. Most of the time, I'm shocked and confused, and it creates a very unique experience.
You ever read one of those choose your own adventure stories?
Yeah.
They're pretty bad, but that's essentially what we're talking about.
Except other people write the entries, and they're usually violent sociopaths with no form of morality.
And usually massively powerful, magical.
If they were alive in the real world, they'd be looked upon like Hannibal Lecter would be. I mean, and they're on acid. Those are the people. That's the average player.
And they have access to the most powerful weapons conceived.
Yeah,
usually.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
and also, like you said, with those kind of people, excuse me, those kind of people, the players don't sit down, and half the time they're not even sure what they're going to do. So everyone's in for a surprise.
yeah.
Well, there are some that know, it's like, I'm going to hack a computer this game, even if there's not a computer within 100 miles. I have the skill. I'm going to use it, goddammit.
Yeah, that's the thing. Each player has their own thing that they want to do in the game. You know, some are actors; they want to develop the story. You know, be very dramatic. Others are the one-trick ponies. You know, I'm gonna do this, and that's what I do in these games.
And the other is I must rack up a body count that defies comprehension.
Or my real life sucks so badly I must overcompensate for it in the game by being, the lesbian ninja stripper.
Or my girlfriend just dumped me, so I must take my rage out on her.
I must kill all lesbian ninja strippers. So
the lesbian ninja stripper game of 1993.
So I guess everyone here, you need to, is pretty much the same way. You feel like the rules are the important thing. You shouldn't be free-forming it for the most part. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously there are exceptions, but I don't know. I think the thing is, you need to learn the rules before you can break them. And because if you just break a rule because it seems stupid or you don't understand why it's there, then you're just going to create a really crappy or really biased situation.
And so also, most of your gamers are probably pretty well informed of the rules themselves.
Yeah.
So if you start breaking rules, they're probably going to know. At least one person in your group's going to know you're breaking a rule.
Yeah.
And you can lose credibility as a GM that way, too.
Yeah. So what do you think, Dan?
It's just one of those things I've heard people discuss that they change the rules or fudge the rules or ignore a rule because if, as GMs, even though you don't know how the ending's going to happen, you do have an idea of what you would like the ending to be. And there are situations where you feel that something's going on, and if you don't tweak it in such a way, then the ending is not going to reach where you would like it to be. Which, of course, on the one hand, you run dangerously close, if not blatantly railroading people.
Yeah,
but
that's a problem.
Sometimes you do need to just coax your players back onto the track. Like, we sat down and you guys decided at the beginning of this campaign you want to kill the demon lord of whatever layer of hell.
Yendor, let's just call him that.
Yeah. And then they're off and they're currently busy trying to find the secretive ninja lesbian stripper. Because +5 because and so you do kind of have to maybe just make the battle easy or make it seem like you just can't find her.
Yeah. Or it's act like a tugboat, just kind of keep nudging them in the direction they need to go, even while they're trying to blatantly do a 180.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, honestly, the 10% of the times when you want to change the rules, it's usually something minor. Like, whenever I run a Call of Cthulhu type investigation mystery game, there's always going to be the time when the player misses the goddamn clue. And you're like, all right, fine, you failed. You all failed your spot checks. You all failed your library use checks. You all failed. Here's the clue. Okay, now go on. Because it's just, the game, the players are totally lost if they can't figure out that one little clue that they need.
Yeah, it kind of sucks when something hinges on one skill roll that everybody misses.
Yeah, especially when it's in the middle of the game. And the other thing, personally, I have a bias I've noticed to keep players alive at least until the end of the session, because I really am self-conscious about killing a player in the middle of a game and then he can't do anything for the rest of the session. So it's like, you got 2 hours where you can't do anything and one of the other players is your ride, so you're stuck here listening to us.
Well, it's not so much a problem with Call of Cthulhu. I mean, you can belt out a new character in that in 10 minutes.
Yeah, I mean, it's awkward to integrate a new character, but
like D&D, good God. Or games where the character creation takes a long time.
Like GURPS.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah, GURPS is pretty bad about that.
Yeah, and
or Palladium, God help you, Palladium.
Well, we don't play that around here.
No, we don't, but I've played it. Yeah. So have you.
We've all played it.
I've played it too.
I'm sure. So I think there are times when you want to sort of nudge the rules to a certain thing, but you have to be very careful about it because, like I mentioned, you can sort of... I just mentioned my own biases, my own tendencies to get the game in certain ways, and I try and fight them. I'm sort of self-conscious about them, but it's you don't want to just keep reinforcing your own biases because then you keep running the same type of game and the same sort of things keep happening over again, and you want to keep it fresh. So I mean, do either of you have noticed any tendencies when you run games to nudge the rules in certain ways?
There are times when I just completely like when I run D&D games, that I ignore the DCs on skill checks for some things. I'm just more so when I ask for the roll, I'm trying to see how high they can go and then gauge from there what they can do, as opposed to if they reach this number, they're guaranteed this thing. Because in my mind, I've got all these situational conditional modifiers running around in my head, and so while the player will say, well, I got a 35, I should be able to get what I want, and it's just like, no, that's not necessarily the case for this situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the story to the Gargoyles game running in the Storyteller system.
The old one, right? Not the new.
Yeah, the old one, the old World of Darkness. We've been playing that for going on 3 years now, and the characters are so developed that even if they miss a vital clue, often we can have a 6-hour-long gaming session of just interacting with the players and some of the NPCs I have. So I guess it really depends on the game, and sometimes it's straight.
What kind of tendencies have you noticed? Any tendencies for you to bias the rules or fudge the rules in a certain way?
Sometimes I admit I'm like a lot of GMs who run a really long-lasting campaign. I have NPCs that I really start to like. Yeah. And of course,
you didn't kill him.
Yeah, as of course, and some of them are antagonists, and there's a couple of times that they've come dangerously close to killing him, and I do not want this NPC. I have too much fun playing him, like running this guy, and I just don't want to see him die. So sometimes I've not so much the GM fiat, but I would. He had more cover than that. Your bullet misses. Yeah, or I secretly roll his dodge and he had 5 successes on that. So wow, he's gone.
Yeah,
that's
a very common tendency. It's sort of hard once you've written something as a GM or you have something to let go of it, or again your preconceived notion of this is how it's going to go down. It's very hard to let go, and I think the sign of a good game master versus a bad game master is the good game master can let go when it's the right time. A bad game master will do whatever it takes in his power to keep it straight. Now, like for your example, you have your favorite villains, and it's okay to fudge a dodge roll or something like that. But if the players had him dead to rights, like they set up such a brilliant trap, like a 5 megaton nuclear weapon that he just walks into point blank range, no way for him to.
Or it's inside of him, right?
Yeah, exactly. And you still say no, he's alive. That was a clone. That was a robot double. Ha 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 ha. Well, that would be bad.
Yes.
But if you were able to let go of him in that situation, that would be the sign of.
Yeah. Of course. I'm also helped by the fact that I'm not going to say my other group is not imaginative. They certainly are, but devious, they're not devious.
Well, that's a hypothetical.
I understand that, but
I read the reason I thought of this is I read this post on RPG.net where players are talking about dumb things players have done, and one of the dumb things game masters have done, and one of the guys mentioned, all right, I was playing D&D. Players were hired to figure out why these goblins were being, bitches and tearing shit up and just, being like goblins. So they go there, they scout it out, they find the goblins are in this cave, they know it's the only entrance in or out of the cave. So, I planned this whole dungeon, blah, blah, blah. Instead, they say, you know what, screw this, we're going to get a whole bunch of dead bushes and brush and stuff like that, and we're just going to smoke them out. Ha, 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 ha. And I was like, son of a bitch.
Yeah.
And since they knew that there was no way for the goblins to get out other than that one entrance, I just, gave up that dungeon I had written up and just let them, win with that because it was a really good plan. And for me, once I read that post, I realized that's the definition. Because the game master realizes you should let them lose or win and then move on. Because there's always going to be another session. There's always going to be you can always, if you want to challenge them, you can always add something in later on. Don't get so caught up in that one thing.
And in that very situation, you could take that dungeon layout that you had, change the goblins to a different type of
enemy, just use it again.
And use it again.
Exactly,
This time put windows.
Yeah. give them a couple air shafts. Yeah, exactly. See, that's what the sign of a good game master is like, well, all right, you win this time, but next time, Richards.
Yeah, and of course,
good game masters are
and a good like that case, a good villain. They will want him to come back.
Yeah.
If they enjoy him, they'll. I've actually had a few times where some of my villains I really liked, they've actually cornered, but they let go. They did that for me, and I never got a chance to prove it. I think I could have, just accepted, to let that villain be eliminated. Of course, in Mutants and Masterminds, they play do-gooders, so.
Yeah.
That's just easy. Off to prison. He escapes next week.
Yeah, it depends on the genre. I mean, if that was D&D, the players would be like,
they would have
stick him with metal swords.
Yeah, they would have snuffed him out in an instant.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's what you do to D&D villains.
Yeah, and D&D villains obviously can be resurrected, but without their stuff, the villains are just little bitches for the most part. I mean, obviously you're going to get one, Munchkin villain or a dragon or something that doesn't need loot to be good. Anyways, so that's sort of, I think, the what game masters should do. But the rules obviously aren't just for game masters; they're for players too. Mm-hmm. What do you guys think about what role the rules take for players? I mean, how vigilant should they be? What are the dangers for players either following the rules too closely or not closely enough, or is that even possible for a player?
I know there's one game. There was one game I was in. My friend, or a friend of mine who's since moved away, is running, where it was a diceless system.
Yeah.
Which meant almost there were no rules.
Oh, this was Sean's game.
Yeah, this was Sean's, and you could make any kind of character you wanted, but there was no die rolls. So, and really no way to judge how powerful your character was, except what you said he was capable of doing. So, really, the whole game for us players was just, especially, it was built for player killing. Player killing. It was built for that.
Right.
But really,
that's a sign, a bad sign right there.
But it just boiled down basically to us saying what we're going to do, and just him deciding who should win.
Wow.
And that it needed at least a few rules to put some structure to it.
Right, to make it.
And when there are also situations where it seems like some of the rules seem to hold up the game. Like one of the things that I guess even Wizards has said that they did wrong with 3rd Ed D&D is how grapple works. And I have experienced this firsthand because I played in a low-level Eberron game where I built a character that did nothing but grapple. That is how he killed people, was by grappling them. And
you're just asking for to get killed in that game. Like the GM's gonna say, "You're gonna die. I'm gonna disintegrate you, so I don't have to deal with crap rules."
Yeah,
it's like, oops, beholder.
Yeah. But we're level 1. Beholders still live. They don't just they're level 1. I can't touch them.
Yeah. And so there are situations like that where a GM would probably get frustrated with the rules that a player has chosen to abuse. Because if I got a hold of somebody, there's a good chance that I wasn't going to let go until they were dead.
Yeah. So assuming, and then you have to figure out size modifiers, blah blah blah. Yeah, that's a pain. So you kind of, you're technically okay to make that character. That's kind of a bitch thing to do, especially in 3.x. But obviously, that's sort of the other thing. Rules lawyering. I think that's sort of the. At what point should players let a rule go, or when should they challenge the GM? Because obviously, we all have the idea the rules lawyer is just going to argue to death until he gets his way. But I mean, should the players just totally accept the GM? I mean, when should they say no? You're being blah blah blah. This is crap.
The situations like if the GM's using fiat to do something, then if they're doing it in the sense that you could understand at some point that they were doing it for the greater good, then I would be willing to let it go. But in situations where the GM's just like, you guys are frustrating me and I hate you all, I'm going to use the rules to make you suffer for all the suffering you've inflicted on me and my carefully crafted campaign.
By killing my NPC and smoking out my goblins.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Then you're going to start getting fudgy. Yeah. Then it's not as good.
Right.
Then.
Tom?
And it's especially bad like when the GM is running a system that not many other people know.
Oh yeah.
The very first time I played GURPS, I had no idea what it was. I know it was point based. Now that I know, he was making up rules as he went along.
Who was running this?
This was another friend from high school.
Okay.
I met him.
Third Ed, right? 3rd Ed GURPS.
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously.
And I think he ran games solely to inflict pain on the other players. Yeah, he made combat rules up. He made advantages and disadvantages up that he only gave his NPCs. Like a 10-point version of invulnerability. So I'm immune to all kinetic damage.
For 10 points.
That's he said, and we asked him like, what? He has immunity to all kinetic. So anything that just hits him with force, and he says, like, well, he said that all the villains we're facing are to the same level as we are. We have 150 points. How did? And he also has machine gun skills and demolition skills, and like we didn't know much about this because we knew something was going on.
Yeah.
Well, I've got a question
All
in
right.
the situation of, say you have an inexperienced player. You
Yeah.
brought them in, and either they're attached to a player that you know is a good player, say also girlfriend, wife, boyfriend, even
significant
other, and they're not quite grasping the rules, and the other players aren't quite helping them, but they're still trying. They're not. Is it okay as the GM to bend the rules around to let that player continue? In the sense, like, if the scout or ranger character that they have built decides to try to be the party face and fails horribly at it according to the dice, would you still let them succeed?
I mean, again, I think the thing is with new players, you obviously feel the tendency to try and get them hooked on the game, so you want to be a little easier on them.
And usually, success usually makes that easier than failure.
Right. But on the other hand, you want to show them that this is a game where you can win. Not win, but you don't always succeed on stuff. Mm-hmm. So if they roll horribly, I think the thing is to make it entertaining. Like, say your character, tries to diplomacy, but he inadvertently, like if he's talking to an elf, he inadvertently mentions something that translates to be a horrible insult to their mother in Elvish, and make it entertaining. Make it something that the player can work off of to show that while the character's trying to be smooth and all this other stuff, that he's just horribly blunt, and because it also depends on the player itself, like how old they are. Like maturity comes in a lot, like in the sense if they're a very young player, they tend to like take losing very personally. Mm-hmm. So you kind of have to put kid gloves on. On the other hand, do you really want to play with somebody who's always going to take losing that personally? I mean, you're at a point you're going to say, you know what, the dice don't always agree with you. Just But if they're
this isn't a video game with cheat codes.
Yeah. So I would say. Just say you try your best, but play it up, make it really an exciting, interesting moment, and provide them with a new opportunity. Like, I don't know, it depends on the exact situation, but I would try and spin it into something, raise the stakes, make it a more exciting event, so they can see what's going on, and to show them that they don't always succeed. So
I always think come on, losing makes when you win all the more sweeter.
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're always going to win, it just gets boring.
As we go into the game, oh boy, here's where we kick everyone's ass we encounter, and we're just gonna be the biggest badasses in the world again.
Yeah, so that's why you need the fairness, the challenge, and the consistency in the rules. That's why you need to follow the rules most of the time, because otherwise you don't get that.
Yeah.
Because I know you guys, like when you're playing Mask of Nine or Lothotep, you got when you really won because
It felt real.
Well,
yeah,
about as close as you can get to winning in Call of Cthulhu.
Well, come on! I think the happiest moments is like we roll it's like crit. Look at that! Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like when you're killing that priestess or somebody in the African temple. I mean, that was really... Somebody rolled a critical hit on that head priestess when the thousands of cultists around her, and you only had that one shot, and just,
Or that time that my private investigator chased down a sorcerer in the middle of the desert during the attack on the mosque, and just started emptying clips into him, trying to get him to stop summoning things.
Or my German guy on the walls of the mosque.
See, you remember that, and if it was just I'm sure we've all been in boring games where they're very easy and they're much more forgettable.
Well, I think you tend to remember your epic successes. You also remember your epic fuck ups too.
Yeah,
and you talk about them just as much as you do your epic successes.
Yeah.
and also like situations. I remember when I started the first round of Tolus with you guys, and you guys just cleared the entire house, no problem.
Yeah.
And then you got to the bottom of the dungeon, and
Yeah.
there was an encounter that you guys weren't even supposed to open at all, or at least not yet, and you guys still opened the door anyway, and there was a horrible abomination monster that woke up and tore you guys a new one as you were
nearly
trying to flee.
died. Yeah. That
And
was
then-
my paladin, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and then you tried to run outside and found the cultists who...
Yeah,
were
that was
alert.
fun. I love that. I thought, I was like, damn, this is tough. That was
Oh,
like,
yeah, I
one
think
of my favorite moments.
if there's
of the entire game.
if there's like a actual threat to your character's life and limb, I think it makes it a lot more exciting.
Or just not necessarily life or limb, and it depends on the game, but just total success or total failure. Because total failure can still make an interesting game. I mean, I still think the Yakuza game I ran, that was one of the most memorable games I ever did. Because all of you just loved the ending, where all the players, it was a total party kill, and everybody loved it. Because they all died, fighting the other gangsters. And it was,
Well, you still talk about it fondly.
yeah, exactly. So I'll probably have to run another one sometime. So.
And maybe we might actually focus on some, supernatural elements this time.
Well, hell, I'll just make it straight up gangster Yakuza or something like that. I don't know, but that's for the future. But and of course, I'll be so that's sort of what I think of. Does that answer your question? I mean,
Yeah, that's more. I was just kind of throwing that out there as food for
Yeah.
thought. Is when you're trying to entice a new player, is it okay to fudge the rules, or are you going to set a bad standard?
yeah. I mean, the main thing is to show that the game is fun and exciting and interesting. And the reason why it's fun and interesting and exciting is because it can change. It's very chaotic, and it's very a lot of all kinds of cool stuff can happen in it, and that can only happen when there's a real variety, a real randomness in it, I think. And along with good storytelling, good playing, all that minor stuff,
Yeah.
It's
the
a
characters.
yeah.
Who needs them?
But on the other hand, I think the last thing we should talk about a little is the level of rules, in the sense rules light versus rules heavy. I mean, on one hand you can have totally free form games like Sean's, and then you can have like Champions.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I know I haven't played it, but you've seen the rule book.
Yeah.
Have you? It's like the size of a phone book.
Yeah.
It can stop bullets. Like the people who designed the game, like, we shot some bullets in it. See? And they posted video on their website, or some fan. I mean, low caliber bullets, but still, it's a phone book.
If you can plink a bullet with the rules book,
Yeah.
that's saying something.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it says something.
And the math involved, and people play it. They love it. There's I don't know how many, but they. So, what level of rules works best for you? And go ahead and mention specific systems.
I remember. Well, Ross, you were in on that game that John ran with the Rises system.
Oh yeah.
And that was about as simple as it gets, and you can still have dice.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun, I think, playing that game.
That's a very rules light game. That's like you write down what kind of stats you have so many D6 worth of attributes, and
you assign them in different areas.
you have awesome at 5, so you roll 5d6, and then that determines whether you succeed or not. Depending on, and that's it. Yeah, that's true.
And my best, Mutants and Masterminds to me is perfect because the D20 system is a good system, but I love the point-based stuff and the fact that the rules are specific enough, but the details are left vague. So you can pretty much, if there's people that play these games the people I talk to, their biggest problem with Dungeons and Dragons is they say it seems like, okay, when you're fighting it, all right, roll to hit, you hit, roll for damage.
I think
there's some people they want to do it really cinematically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, there are some D20 versions that fix that, like Iron Heroes.
Yeah, and Arcana Evolved,
But the players I play with, most of them they prefer sci-fi and like superhero stuff to fantasy, and they say that's perfect for them because they can actually they can kind of describe what they want to do with the powers and stuff and that and the feats and Mutants and Masterminds, and they
That's
love
a little leaning on the rules heavy, so.
a little bit, but
Well, I think it is pretty rules heavy. I mean, not at obviously Champions is the thing, but I mean, like rules light systems, I would say, obviously Rhesus is one of the most rules light. Then you would have something like All Flesh Must Be, and the Unisystem, which is pretty, sort of medium. Call of Cthulhu, a little on the light side, not too bad. And then D20 is getting pretty complex, with skills, feats,
But I think,
Attributes.
but the mutants are masterminds. To me, it's yeah, maybe rules heavy, but it still adds a lot of leeway to do what you want.
Yeah.
Like, and even in other things, like I'm running an Arcana Evolved game, and one of the characters, or one of my players, who's usually who's always been a much of a shoot 'em up kind of guy, has found a class that rewards you for having an imagination and using its abilities. And so he's eaten this up. It's a character type that he's never played before.
Can you give me an example of like what he does, how he uses it?
He's playing a Rune Thane, which in Arcana Evolved is a light caster. They're not as heavy casters as the two primary casting classes, and they supplement their casting ability with runes. And runes are essentially like you take the exploding rune spell from D&D and you just change how it works, in the sense that you can have runes that explode when people read it or touch it, or you can have it summons a bear, or you can have it teleport them to a specific spot. And so he's talking about doing things like using the rune of teleportation, tricking somebody into triggering it, and the end result is they get transported to right above his portable hole that he bought.
Okay.
And doing things like that. And he's also talked all the different things you can do. Like you could draw a rune of persuasion onto a coin and pass it off as part of a bribe. And so the guy that touches the coin starts liking you a bit better. And it's just, it appeals to the nature of just like, what kind of stuff can I do? And he's been shooting ideas off of me, and I've heard everything from the coins to the teleporting into a portable hole to I'm going to bake a cake with this rune inscribed on it, and it's going to summon a swarm of bees. So, just to annoy somebody. And it's just like, cake bees.
Okay.
It's just, the rules say it can happen, but it's also, and it's balanced in the sense that a swarm of bees isn't incredibly difficult to overcome, but it's still annoying.
Right. Personally, for me, the rules, it really depends on what type of game I'm running and how many people I'm running it for. Like, if I'm running for 6 people, I want Call of Cthulhu, BRP, basic role-playing, or something similar like that, because it's very light, it's very fast. You make your percent of rules, and that's it, for the most part. If I'm running something that's a one-shot or something with a lot of action, cinematic action, then usually I want something, pretty simple, pretty light. If I'm doing something more complex in terms of the type of combat I want to do or the type of characters you can build, like the reason I'm using GURPS is because I wanted for this Majestic 13 game, because I wanted very complex characters. I wanted people to develop their characters. And so really, for me, it really depends. Like I like really good rules light systems and really good rules heavy systems. The main problem I've had with rules heavy system is that you need multiple copies of the books, and people need to be familiar with the game before they start it, because it takes a while to digest a system. I mean, you can't, even if you've read it, it takes a while to really remember what type of rules you have to make.
Remember the siege on the Illithid city?
Oh yeah. It's 6 hours of epic D&D combat, and that was with me master the D&D rules, 3.5, and everybody else pretty familiar with it, and it took 6 hours of fighting to get in real time. I don't know how many rounds it was. It was like 30 or 40 rounds for all the characters to lose all their spell points, because we're using spell point variants, and just at level 25 characters last a long time in a fight. It takes a long time to whittle them down to nothing, or so.
I just remember statting up for when we attempted the level 40 epic game.
So again, it really depends on what you want to achieve. I think the rules do matter in terms of setting, theme, everything. The rules are kind of like the filter that everything else in the game affects everything else in the game. That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So that's, I guess, our sort of overview of the role of the rules. Anyways, we'll be back in a bit with gaming anecdotes, a letter from Tom, and
you'll like this one. It's one that I belted out in 11 minutes while waiting between deliveries at my job today. So I just scribbled it down on paper.
Thanks, Tom. That'll really let people know we're a really high-quality podcast.
Yeah, it'll win a lot of people over on the professional level.
And, of course, shout-outs and all that jazz.
Hey, come on. Some people like, improv.
All right, we'll be back.
Dear Emperor Prosek, first off, I would like to congratulate you on your accomplishment of forming an evil empire in Rifts, a game where humans are usually the bitch race, not the orcs. The Death's Head emblem you use to adorn your weapons, vehicles, and armor are an iconic symbol of cruelty and hate, and your ambition of conquest knows no bounds. You even have a son, more ruthless and cunning than you, to carry out your legacy. Your campaign against Tolkien was a prelude to other wars yet to be, and I eagerly look forward to those bloodbaths. However, I have noticed a disturbing trend that has been growing ever more obvious, and I worry that it might be a sign of ill tidings to come. This problem is even an asset to you, so I urge you to think long and hard before you act. The problem involves the uniforms that your war machine wears. They are excellent uniforms, dark and stylish, and with a flair that just screams, "We are an evil empire." The problem is that the uniforms are too cool, and no evil empire that had cool uniforms ever lasts for too long. Nazi Germany, especially the SS, had the coolest uniforms in all of World War II. They inspired fear and awe in all those who saw them, and the Nazis only lasted 12 years. If you want an example closer to your tech level, look no further than the Galactic Empire from Star Wars. They had spectacular uniforms, huge star fleets, a planet-destroying space station, an iconic military warlord, and an emperor even more evil than the neoconservatives. And look what happened to them. They got destroyed by a group of ragtag rebels and a horde of cute furry marketing devices. What I'm trying to say here is that no evil empire with cool uniforms lasts too long. It's just a simple truth of the world. You develop uniforms that inspire fear and terror, and in a decade or two, your war machine will lie in ruins, and some no imagination GM will make you the primary villain in some lame-ass RPG. My advice might seem strange, but I advise you to simply accept your fate and go boldly into the future. Your evil empire will fall, and a newer one will rise, with uniforms as evil and stylish as the ones you have. In fact, evil is both equal parts greed, power, and fashion show. That's right, evil is a fashion show. The winner gets loads of worshipping, fearful masses, great but temporary power, and the experience of getting your evil ass kicked by the far inferior uniforms of the heroes. But at least you'll get to stand on the stage, spotlights on you, waving to the cheering hordes of your armies and say, "Submit or die."
Bars, passions, all I see in other rings have into me as I into the sands. Nor return the streets with souls, wishes of lurking love.
All right, and that was a letter from Tom
It was from me, from the heart.
to the not the internet, the Emperor Prosek and his
Yeah.
uniforms.
That's right.
so pretty.
Distributed. to
I'm
the
so
internet.
pretty.
All right. Anyways, of course, now we have our shout-outs, where these are things that have met with approval from me, Tom, and whatever guy shows up to do the show.
Hi, I'm whatever guy that shows up.
He's Scruffy the janitor.
Yes, the hobo.
Scruffy loves his company.
Anyways, I got a few. One is actually, many of you know there are these things called play-by-post games where people do a normal RPG just on a forum, a message board somewhere where, you know, the game master, right, here's what's going on. Players post, I'm going to do this. Usually I don't play them or read them because I have ADD. But there's one actually I found that is quite well written and is very entertaining, called Blackbird Dreaming. It's on the traditional games forum of somethingawful.com. It's a GURPS 4th ed game, post-apocalyptic. Survivors in a shelter for a year, they step outside and guess what? The world's all fucked up from a crazy disease and all kinds of nasty things. It's 27 pages, like 1,600 posts so far. It's been going on for about 8 months. It's a very entertaining game. I recommend you read it. So that's my first shout out. Dan, you had one?
I was going to give out a shout out to Monty Cook's Tolus, City by the Spire. I'm about to start my third campaign through it, and yeah, every time before I start one up, I crack the big book open and start reading over stuff, and every time I'm just in wonder and awe about all the planning, the thought, and everything that goes into this game. And it's comforting to know that I can open the book, find an NPC or a location, and it's cool enough I can base an adventure around it.
You know, interesting to note, I was just browsing RPG.net today, and Tolos came up in one of the discussions, and it's out of print now, and it's worth over $200 now. It's gone up quite a bit in value. Also, Monty Cook's Call of Cthulhu D20, is retailing for $40 now. You can average for used for sales like $65. So Monty Cook, he does good stuff.
Yeah.
Tolos
does.
I've looked through it. It's a great looking book. So yeah, if you can get a copy, I would recommend it if you have the cash to spare.
And to tie it in back to what it is that you're encouraged to make the setting your own, and so you can use it as written in the book, but it's presented in such a factual way with the flavors in there, but it's more of this is an encyclopedia campaign setting, and it's just, you can use what's there and run it straight from the book, or you can throw your own spin on it, and some people would say that's not following the rules because you're not following things as written.
All right, Tom, you had a shout out?
Yeah, I'd like to give one to the World of Darkness book, Project Twilight, which is all about playing, government agencies in the world of darkness, basically the X-Files in the world of darkness. And I like it because I think there's something to be said about playing just a mortal in the world of darkness who can actually hold their own in the world of darkness against the supernatural shit that's in every inch of the world. You know what? I think most people know you can probably get it at a used game any used game section of your friendly local game store for very cheap. And there's a lot of material for a modern day horror game that is not necessarily rule specific. There's a lot of good stuff in there. So if you're running a modern day hunter type game, you should pick it up. And actually the adventure they list in, which is the St. Clair contract, is a very excellent. Okay. Good point. Probably easily adaptable to the new world of darkness. Yeah, and there's something to be said for having a mortal that when you encounter a situation, you can actually have if you have 5 dots in rank, you can actually call in an airstrike against something. There's something to be said for that ability in the world of darkness. Right. True enough. My last shout out is for a podcast I listen to quite a bit. Film Spotting, really good movie reviews. It's just something easy to get into, and both the reviewers know a lot about movies. And if you want to hear good movie reviews, I would recommend it. So. And speaking of which, that brings me to my last shout out. Yeah. I'd like to give a shout out to a movie, which is the movie Shoot 'Em Up. Yeah. And I say this because just the other day, just last Thursday, I forced Ross to watch this with Dan. You did. And Dan and I were of course laughing because it's quite funny and quite amusing. No. Ross, it looked like I was killing him a little inside with each minute that passed. It's just pandering. The characters are so shallow and two-dimensional. It's just, there's nothing there. And of course, but watching it with him made all this come up, and that's why I made him watch it. I wanted to watch it with him because I like cheesy action movies too, but this wasn't a cheesy action movie. This was like a computer-generated action movie that was not written by a human. It was like a student film with a $10 million budget, It's just like what, first-year film student who does a lot of cocaine is just like, all right, this one is going to be cool. He's going to use a carrot to stab someone in the eyeball. It's going to be awesome. You see, this is why you watch a movie like that with a film student, with like Ross here. Because this is what you're going to get all night long. I like I like crazy, cheesy movies, just not soulless, fake, artificial, bad. Yeah.
To be perfectly fair, I could have sided with you, Ross. Like we said this earlier, that I could have felt that way about the movie, but I had the option after the first 5 minutes that I could either be pained by it or just laugh at the pain, and I figured that one would preserve my sanity more, so I just enjoyed it for what it was.
All right. Yeah. Well, you know who else laughed at his pain? That's right, Hitler. Yes. Gentlemen, we have brought up the Nazis in this group. Yes. It's official.
Yes.
Goodwin's Law. Yes, we have now... criticized my opponent as being a Nazi.
So thank you, Shoot 'em Up, for bringing that law into play.
Yes. All right. Anyways, that's been episode 8, the role of rules. This is, of course, Ross Payton, Tom Church, and Dan McDowell.
Well, thank you for introducing us again by yourself. Letting us do it.
I leave this insanity of rules, lawyering, and bitching about movies that are horrible. I present to you the old ones and true insanity.
But before we go, I have one last thing, the gaming anecdote. A few summers ago, I was running a All Flesh Must Be Eaten game, zombie survival horror, where everyone got to play themselves. This was, of course, a standard. Everyone's run a game like this before, once or twice at least. And everyone pretty much rolled up pretty standard characters, that really reflected who they really were, except for one, Jordan. He made a character with firearms 5, which is the maximum you can have in All Flesh Must Be Eaten. And he's never been in the military. He's never been in law enforcement. He's not an Olympic champion shooter. And he's not a sniper of any sort. Also, he picked some disadvantages like alcoholism, cigarettes, addiction to cigarettes, and a few other things which never really came into play. He never role-played them. But I allowed it because I was too nice. And in the end, though, it worked out because all the players made fun of him so much that he eventually regretted the decision, and I had him killed at the end of the game. So, that's it for RPPR. Enjoy the old ones.
Mortal to the winning bout from my mansion in the cloud, which the breath of twilight melts, and the summer sunset gales, with the azure and vermilion, which is neat for my pavilion. Though thy quest may be forbidden, on the star be my have ridden, in the blue depth of the waters. When the wave had no strife, when the wind is a stranger, and the seas take at the life, when the mermaid is taken, and we had with chills, like the storm on the surface, in the sound of its bells. Earth, oceans are night, mountains, winds, they start. And they beg and bidding, child of clay before thee, and they quest their spirits are. What was doing us, son of mortal slave? Forgetfulness of what was I, of that which is within me. Night, mountains, winds, they start, are and they beg and bidding, child of clay before thee, and they quest their spirits on. What was doing thus, son of a mortal, say, forgetfulness of what the who not as a voice shall forbid thee to rejoice. Thee shall not deny on the quiet over sky. The spirit shall not sleep. There are shades which will not vanish. There are thoughts who cannot vanish. By a power to the alone, you can never be alone. The one from us